Okay, get ready for this one because today's deep dive is, well, it's a wild ride.
Hmm.
We're talking about a guy who went from a really, really rough childhood, and I mean rough, to becoming like this successful entrepreneur. But he's also like a leadership coach now, which is, kind of interesting given where he came from. It's not your typical, rags to riches kind of thing. This is about finding, like, I don't know how to put it, finding fuel in the darkest places. So we're diving into The Soul Warrior, this book by Abood Tamimi.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
And yeah, trust me, the title, it fits. Our mission today is to figure out how Tamimi took this trauma he went through as a kid and used it, this is the crazy part, used it as the foundation for like his whole approach to business and personal growth.
What's fascinating to me about stories like this is that it really speaks to this concept of post-traumatic growth. It's not about pretending the pain isn't real, not at all. It's more like recognizing that some people, not everyone, of course, but some people can take those really tough experiences and kind of integrate them into like a bigger story, a story about resilience. They come out transformed.
Right. And this is definitely not one of those, super sugar-coated self-help journeys. Tamimi goes through something truly awful. I mean, we're talking abuse from ages 11 to 14.
Hmm.
He's very open about this time in his life in the book. And it was, I don't know, it was really striking to me how he found refuge not in like escape, but in learning. His dad's business became his escape, his classroom. He was learning all about like the workplace, the ins and outs. And then on top of that, he's spending hours at the British Council becoming fluent in English.
At first glance, you might not see how that all connects, but those coping mechanisms he was developing were actually super important. It's like those experiences, as awful as they were, they kind of gave him an early education. Like he's learning about business and cross-cultural communication without even realizing it. And those are skills that really came in handy later on.
It's like he was subconsciously downloading skills for a future he couldn't even imagine. And here's where things get really interesting. He calls the abuse he survived, get this, an unexpected gift.
Wow.
Now, I know that might sound crazy, right? But what he's doing is he's framing it as a catalyst for growth.
Hmm.
He's not ignoring the trauma, not at all. But he's also not letting it define him. He's choosing how it fits into his story.
And that's the key thing to understand here, right? This is his truth, his way of tucking back control. But it's super important to remember that this isn't, a one-size-fits-all approach to healing. It's not about minimizing the impact of abuse at all. It's more about recognizing that healing is deeply personal and it can look really different for everyone.
And here's the thing. His story doesn't end there. Just when you think things can't get any crazier, bam, midlife crisis hits. We're talking leaving a successful banking career in the U.S. to run the family furniture business back in Qatar.
And this wasn't some easy transition. He's dealing with economic hardship. His mom's health is declining. It's like he's being tested again. But this time, it's not just about survival. It's about something bigger. It's about searching for meaning.
Exactly. And that search leads him right to his faith. He starts studying the Quran, especially the opening chapter, Al-Fatiha. He's looking for answers, a sense of peace. And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, this really sounds like that, classic search for meaning that you hear psychologists talk about. It's like that point in life when everything you thought you knew, it just doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
And it makes you question everything. Like, what's the point of it all? What really matters? A lot of us go through something like that, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
And for Tamimi, that's where Al-Fatiha comes in. He talks about how he found comfort in the verses, but it's more than that. It's like he's saying he found a kind of roadmap for action. Like faith without action is just, I don't know, an empty thought.
Right. It's got to be more than just words.
Exactly. It's the doing that matters. And get this, he takes it even further, right? He says that reciting Al-Fatiha is like having this conversation with God. It's a two-way street, not just like asking for things.
That's really interesting.
I know. It's about seeking guidance, understanding.
Yeah.
And then he connects this whole idea of a dialogue to leadership. He talks about how a lot of the prophets, were shepherds. What do you think about that?
I see where he's going with this.
Uh-huh.
It's like this really beautiful analogy, taking care of sheep, leading people. Same idea. A good shepherd, they need patience, compassion. They need to understand their flock, especially because, let's face it, no two sheep are exactly alike, right?
Why
And
does
it's
it...
the same with leading people.
It makes you wonder if more CEOs spent time herding sheep, maybe the world would be a better place.
Maybe.
But seriously, this whole thing about shepherds, it leads directly into what Tamimi calls soulpreneurship.
Right. So he's got these 4 pillars, right? Faith, heart, health, and mind. And he believes that those are like the foundation of everything.
Like for personal growth and for business.
Exactly. But he keeps coming back to the power of the heart.
Compassion.
Yeah. And he's not just saying it's a nice thing to have, he's saying it's good for business.
Interesting.
And he actually lives by that, you know? He
Oh.
talks about how he started incorporating philanthropy into his own life, and it wasn't just about giving back. It actually made him more driven.
It's like they say, helping others is helping yourself or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just him, right? There's tons of research on this now.
Okay, so it's not just some feel-good thing.
Nope. It has real benefits.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. He didn't just talk about it. He actually did something.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. At his company, Three Mushrooms Telecom, he came up with this really unique system for evaluating employees.
How's that work?
So instead of just focusing on like profits and all that, he actually encouraged his team to come up with their own personal growth goals.
Hold on. So instead of like hitting sales targets, they're saying, I want to learn to play the guitar.
Exactly. Or, I'm finally going to write that novel.
Why?
And his thinking was, if you support your employees in their personal lives, it'll have a ripple effect. They'll be happier, more engaged.
I guess it changes how they see their job, too.
Right. It's not just a job anymore. It's part of something bigger. And you know what? It worked. Employee loyalty went up. They had all these new ideas. And yeah, even profits went up.
That's amazing. It really challenges that whole idea of, cutthroat business. But this focus on well-being, it wasn't just some business strategy for him, right? Didn't Tamimi have his own health scare? Yeah, he was struggling with diabetes for a while, right? And he actually decided to completely change his lifestyle to reverse it. Diet, exercise, the whole 9 yards.
It wasn't just some abstract health goal for him, though, right? He'd seen how bad it could get.
Oh, right, his mom.
Yeah, she passed away from complications from diabetes, so it's personal for him, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't just about reading about it in a textbook.
That's got to be a huge motivator. He saw what could happen if he didn't take it seriously and decided to make a change.
Exactly, and it really speaks to this whole idea of taking control of your own life. You know, it's like he learned that from his business, but then applied it to his health, too.
And that's kind of the message he's giving his employees, too, isn't it?
Right.
You have the power to shape your own life, both at work and outside of work.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that you have choices, and those choices have consequences.
And speaking of choices, it's interesting how he talks about his own struggles with learning. He's all about lifelong learning, right? But he actually had a hard time with reading.
Yeah, he said he couldn't concentrate on traditional books, which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Totally. But what did he do? He found a way around it. Audiobooks. It's like, why struggle with something if you don't have to?
Exactly. It's about playing to your strengths, finding what works for you.
And he didn't stop there. Remember how we talked about that gap in his education? Well, he decided to go back to school.
Wait, really? After all that, he still went back?
Yeah, he went to the Cyprus International Institute of Management. Can you imagine? He could easily just been like, I'm good. I've done enough. But he was always pushing himself to learn and grow.
That's incredible. It really shows you that learning never stops, no matter how successful you become.
And he wasn't just learning for the sake of it either. He was learning about stuff that was directly relevant to his business, like digital marketing, social media, all that stuff that's constantly changing. He knew he had to adapt to stay ahead of the game.
It's like he's saying, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind.
Exactly. And you know what? He wants everyone to have that same mindset. He doesn't just want to tell his story. He wants to help people write their own.
Yeah, he ends the book with all those exercises, right? For self-reflection and goal setting.
It's really cool, actually. He walks you through how to figure out what you're passionate about, your strengths, your weaknesses. He even has you write out your own life purpose statement.
You know, sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget to think about the bigger picture.
I know, right? It's so easy to just go through the motions.
Yeah.
But Tamimi's really pushing us to be more deliberate, more intentional about our lives.
And that's a powerful message. It's a reminder that we have more control than we think we do.
Absolutely. So if there's one big takeaway from all of this, it's that our past doesn't define us. Even the toughest experiences can be opportunities for growth.
Totally. It's about finding the strength to turn those challenges into something positive, to use them to fuel your journey.
And that's it for today's deep dive. It's been, well, a lot to process, but hopefully you're walking away with some new insights, some food for thought. Until next time, remember that your story is still being written. You got this.